Hey, welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz, and with me today is Chris Prentice, and we are going to talk about The Sopranos Season 1. We are both big Sopranos fans, yes?
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's good to be back on here.
Mm-hmm. What would you say, where does The Sopranos rank for you in, like, all-time favorite shows?
Oh, it's easy number one. It's a slam dunk. You know, I'm a big Shield guy. I like Breaking Bad as much as anybody else, but you know, Sopranos to me is kind of is what sets the pace. And you know, watching a lot of it again this past year, kind of gearing up for the movie. I mean, it only got better. I mean, to me, it's just one of those shows that you're always noticing things that you didn't notice the first time. Characters that maybe didn't click with you originally, they suddenly click with you when you see it again. So, yeah, it's an easy number one for me.
It is something, for me, I'm surprised how it is aged so well, when so many of its imitators and like the whole sort of genre that it uh, kicked off has not aged so well. We did a whole episode about more or less about that topic recently,
Yeah.
but it stands up, I think. But as I've been going back to it, very well, even as like the anti-hero cable drama thing is a bit played out.
No, for sure. I mean, it started that trend. And yeah, the trend has been done to death to the point now where stuff like Dexter is even coming back, and so now,
Mm-hmm.
if you weren't sick of it the first time, here you have a brand new season of Dexter. And I think that was one of the shows that was sort of influenced by Sopranos, and
Sure.
it's though I will say that at least the first episode of the new Dexter season was at least watchable. It was halfway decent, so I don't want to rip on that one too much, but just as an example of shows that just kind of
Sure.
took that concept of the anti-hero protagonist and just kind of, you know, really just beat the dead horse over and over again. I mean, that's kind of an example. But yeah, to me, Sopranos, even though it started that trend, it perfected the trend, and whatever came after it that wasn't
Yeah.
quite as strong is no real bad mark on the Sopranos record just for starting the trend.
Yeah. It originated it and was sort of also the final word on it.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying, like, I don't think that final words really exist, and that genres can keep surprising you over time, even when they seem played out. Like, that just means that it's going to be a little while before somebody finds something new and fun to do with it. But
For sure, for sure.
man, like the Sopranos, especially when you watch the later seasons. I mean, we're still talking about season one, but watching season 6 of Sopranos, it feels like it was made in response to 10 years of Sopranos imitators in some ways.
Yeah.
But it was
Well,
just response to its own fandom.
right. Well, what I notice watching the final season again is how, I don't know if it's David Chase or just all the writers in general, they must have just gotten sick of everyone kind of idolizing Tony, because Tony is just a prick the last season. I mean, he is an awful, awful
Yeah.
person. And that's definitely not the case. I mean, in these early seasons, I mean, you love him. I mean, even when he's doing
Yep.
awful things, I mean, he's this great guy. You'd want to hang out with him. He's the life of the party. You maybe don't want to work
Yeah. You
for him, but
understand how how he's able to seduce people,
for sure.
and make them not want to see his nasty side, which can be really, really nasty, especially as the
Oh,
seasons wear on.
yeah. I mean, the I think of the episode with him owing the money to Hesh in the final season,
Mhm.
and it's like, God, he is
Mhm.
just that. To me, that's the episode where he's just the most diabolical. I mean, he is just really at
Yep.
his worst in that one. It's great to watch, though.
We'll get to season 6B or whatever you want to call it eventually.
Yeah,
But this is something that I think I want to do in each season here.
sure.
who do you think is the worst shittiest shithead of season one? Like everybody on The Sopranos is of all walks of life comes off pretty nasty and venal and kind of shitty. But who is the worst person in season one?
I would go with Uncle Junior. I think he.
Mm.
I love him. I mean, another awesome character that does lots of horrible things, but I love him. But I think, yeah, he's just, oh man, that I just and even though he does worse things than this, but the part with the pie and Boca is, oh man,
Yeah.
I don't know, that really just
Oh no,
always just sticks with me.
I was going to cite that as his low point.
Ah,
Like
yeah,
that's yeah. I mean, he commits greater crimes, like in terms of
sure,
capital offenses, felony murder. But that's where he's. It's sort of the most hateful that we see
yes,
him, and it's a bit petty, and that's a bad look. Even
yeah,
go back to
because I
that
mean,
Hesh episode you're talking about later on. It's Tony looks petty and small in that one, as more than when he's even though he's not physically hurting people.
right, right. I mean, it's just because the episodes kind of sets up that Junior has this relationship with kind of a floozy, but they get along. Everything seems nice. It just seems like a nice thing. He's
It's
the older guy, and just the way it all unravels, it's really sad.
it's sort of a redeeming aspect of his character for the first part of that episode, and then
Oh
it ends
yes,
badly.
yeah, yeah. You really like
But
him when he's hanging out with her.
I would say season one though, like Livia walks off with it. In
Yeah,
terms,
I mean, yeah, it's hard to argue against Livia. I mean, I mean, you could do probably a hours on end podcast just about that character, and yeah, I mean, she's as unique a character as I think there's ever been on TV, in
oh
terms
yeah,
of how how you first are introduced to her to how you see her towards the end of that season. So certainly there's nothing to really disagree about in terms of Livia. I just think Uncle Junior. I mean, you could say that part of Uncle Junior maybe is that he's just kind of ignorant. So he's just not a
mhm.
very bright character, and he's that's maybe one of his foibles. But I don't know. He seems like the worst to me, just because he's the one who's really following through on these decisions that Livia kind of introduces the idea, but Uncle Junior is the one that can actually make it happen.
Yeah, but and maybe this is what the later seasons, especially, are sort of chiding me as a viewer for. But Uncle Junior may be worse, but he's like funner to hang out with.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Livia is just this relentless black hole of negativity that has to ruin the vibe of any room she's in. And it's in this very believable and complex way. It's really incredibly well written and well performed by Nancy Marchand. But
Oh, of course.
Junior's fun sometimes.
Oh, I mean, pretty almost all the time. I mean, pound for pound, over the course of the series, he has the best dialogue. He doesn't have, maybe the quantity wise because he's so often just kind of stuck in his house. But I mean, it's hard to think of a scene that he's in where you're not laughing at some point at something he said, because I mean he just between the what's written for him and how it's delivered, he yeah, he is definitely probably one of the funnest people that you'd want to hang out with on the show, because it's just such a, again, it's just a character that you just don't see. I mean, I can't think of another character even like that.
But he also like I think he gets the benefit there of being paired with Bobby Bacala so much, who's like
Yeah.
a sort of almost vaudevillian comedic
Oh,
foil.
oh yeah. I mean,
To,
they're a great duo. I mean, I even like in this first season just a lot of the stuff between him and Mikey. I mean, even Mikey was just kind of a one
yeah,
season character, but I mean, I thought Al Sapienza, who played him, I thought he was a great sort of first season kind of heavy that isn't really going to last all that
yeah,
long. But
he's
I
one of
thought
the
he
most
was.
lightweight heavies that's ever been because
Yeah, I just
he's not making it to the end.
Oh yeah, no, he's definitely one that you automatically know. Okay, he's not really going to be that important overall, but I thought he was a great, just kind of a jerk, just one of those just gangster jerky
Absolutely.
kind of guys. He was so good, and I just that one line where he tells his wife, go take a Midol. It just is one of those bits that always has stuck with me from that show, just from first hearing him say that. I can hear him in my head saying that right now. So, for a character like that isn't really thought of as one of the great Sopranos characters to still leave that impression, just kind of shows you how important this season was.
No, he's definitely not thought of as one of the great characters. I thought actually he might was the only other candidate besides Livia that I thought you might go for it, just because
He's
you know
close.
he's such a clear antagonist even amongst these shitty anti-heroes. Like he's the
Yeah.
he's not just a bad dude like the rest of them, but he's also crapper to hang out with. The way I was
Yeah,
talking
well, I
about
think
Livia,
he I guess that character kind of had the disadvantage of being on the first season, where obviously the show was getting a lot of pub and it was, critics were raving about it. I don't know if the people or pop culture had yet embraced it in the first season, because I wasn't watching it as it was going on its first season. It wasn't until it came out on DVD that I first saw the show. So I think that might be
same.
one reason that character just maybe hasn't gone on to as much notoriety as some of the other great Soprano characters.
Yeah, and I will say I always remember Mikey and his wife for like giving us one of my favorite Sopranos jokes. It's such a funny show, in
Yeah.
such like you know not conventional setup punchline ways. Uh, One of the things I love that it does, it will separate a punchline from the setup by like multiple scenes, and it just if you're paying attention, then and you'll notice like the incongruity is really funny. There's a great example in the fifth season, I think, but in the first season, there's a great one. Obviously spoilers here. We're spoiling everything, but
Yes.
after
When he dies.
after Mikey is killed, there you see his wife being interviewed on the news, and she's in tears and talking about like I just last time I saw him, last thing he said was that he loved me and that would see me this afternoon or whatever, and he went off. And but we saw their last scene together where he
Yeah.
went off before he got killed, and
Yeah.
she was giving the finger to his back after he like called her a coos or something terrible. But we
Yeah.
just it's such a great like subtle thing that it's not
Oh yeah.
underlining it for you, but it's just you've been paying attention, you recognize that. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Like
180 degrees false.
yeah. Even though, I mean, there was maybe only a couple of scenes between Mikey and his wife. I mean, I love those scenes. I feel like if they had made the decision to keep him around, I feel like there was a lot they could have done with those two characters. Because even though it's again very limited, I really enjoyed those two together.
Yeah, but they couldn't keep him around. And
No.
let's so what the premise we were going to try and work with here is that we were both going to like highlight one episode that we want to talk about from the first season, and I one of my runner ups honorable mention was the finale. Is a really good episode of television, really good episode of Sopranos, and I think part of the reason why it's so good is that uh, it manages to do sort of a straightforward mafia kind of war climax storyline to that fight with Uncle Junior that's been going on, and finally came to a head in the second to last episode.
Yeah.
While also doing this more Sopranos-ish like distinctive thing of it's an anticlimax, and Tony ultimately doesn't get to get satisfaction on his mother and his uncle who are plotting to kill him,
Right.
but they give us throw us in the audience some red meat of we do get to see some sequences of Tony and his crew whacking some juniors guys that
Yeah.
and so Mikey's an important sacrificial lamb in order for that finale to have its cake and eat it too, sort of.
Yeah. Right in the poison oak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
um,
that's a great scene. There's a lot of good kills in that last episode of the season.
yeah, but let's talk about the scene I think I have to pick, or the episode I have to pick for the most important or whatever favorite of season one is Tony's first kill, which is college. I believe
Yeah.
it's episode 5. Uh, and this one, like, you have to kind of pick this. If you're talking about the most important episodes of TV, full stop, in the history of the medium, this is like gotta be in the top 3 that you're mentioning.
Oh, for sure.
It's one of the most influential hours of TV ever. Like multiple other, I've seen interviews with other showrunners and creators who have talked about like this episode particularly sort of opening the door in their mind of like, oh, like we can do TV can do stuff that I didn't think it could do before. Like it's I thought you would have to go to make a movie to do stuff something like this, and now TV can do that.
Yeah, because basically, prior to this, you just didn't have your protagonist, and even if Tony's a mobster, he's still the protagonist of the show,
Mm.
outright murdering somebody. It just didn't really happen. I mean, you would have, cop shows, Sonny Crockett would kill people, Hunter would kill
Yeah, but
people, but
those were
yeah,
righteous
those
kills. You know,
yeah,
they were
those are
justified.
cops. They do that's how cops act. You But in terms of now you have this show where you've the first four episodes you've kind of laid this foundation of, okay, yeah, Tony's a gangster, but he's a loving father and he's a good-natured guy. We like him. We're going to go on this journey with him. And then when they get to episode five, when they get to college, I mean, it kind of throws everything right out the window. And yeah, it totally breaks whatever rule TV had about seeing your protagonist killing someone in cold blood.
Yeah, and that seems a little quaint now. 20 years after the
Hmm.
fact, where we've been living in the changed world that it created. But it was a big thing at the time, and I love the story David Chase tells about pitching that episode and how the head of HBO like came down on him, was like, no, you can't have him just kill a guy in cold blood.
Right.
And because you spent 4 hours building up this like incredible character that we're so happy about, and and you're gonna like ruin him. It's the audience is gonna turn on him and it's gonna be over. And uh and David Chase says that he like said, okay, let me think about it, and then came back to us like, the thing is this, like, we've established this guy is a mobster, and if he goes out here and he finds a guy who is known to be a rat, and he doesn't kill that guy, then he's he's full of shit, and the audience will never respect him again.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the battle was between, the audience will not like this guy if you do this, but they won't respect him if he doesn't do it. Respecting him is apparently so much more important to the audience than liking him.
Yes,
Or the one leads to the other.
for
It's not the
sure.
other way around. Liking somebody does not lead to respecting him, but respecting him does get you on his side.
Yeah, I remember reading or hearing somewhere that they were so worried about this that they kind of, I mean, I don't know if you want to call it a compromise, but what they asked
Yeah,
Chase to do was to have the scene where the Febby Petrulio character is kind of seen with the tweakers, basically saying, hey, you guys need to go take care of this, this guy's after me, and kind of showed that Febby was a drug dealer so that they could kind
yeah.
of get the audience to say, oh, well, this guy, as if being a rat isn't bad enough, he's also a drug dealer, and so it makes it a little easier to take when Tony kills
To
him.
swallow.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
mean that's so I've always kind of heard that was the story. That was kind of the one concession that Chase had made with the episode in terms of saying, well, all right, if you want me to make him a drug dealer, we'll go ahead and do that.
yeah. Well, Chase has copped to that. I mean, I was listening to an interview with him just recently where he was talking about that, but he
Okay.
doesn't say that it was. He doesn't say that was forced on him. He would phrased it as more like that he came up with that as a sop to like
Okay.
get them to accept it. But I mean, it's still a compromise, and it is like but it was his idea for how he could still have the guy kill him and get HBO to accept it. And of course, that's something that, like, even a year or two later, like, they
Yeah.
would probably never have asked him, but Chase definitely would not have agreed to make any sort of
No,
concession like
no.
that.
I mean, I think in season one, I mean, as they're making it, they don't know exactly how it's going to be taken by the critics and by the audience. They don't know it's going to just
Yeah,
become this huge sensation. So I think he obviously had a little more. He would listen a little more to what the people at HBO were saying. But yeah, I think once season two started, that all went out the window.
yeah, and I think the other thing that comes up over time is that start to realize, probably Chase and HBO both, that the audience is way more bloodthirsty than
Oh
we give
yeah,
them credit for, and that it turns out if the audience was getting mad at the characters in the later seasons, it was for not killing enough people.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that's one thing, I know we're focusing on season one, but when people talk about the finale and how upset they are that, there's really just, there's not really much bloodshed in that finale. I mean, it's kind of a very talky finale.
I mean,
Yeah, but if you watch, I mean, I know there is
I don't know.
Phil
There is.
getting his head crushed. I mean, that's about
Mhm.
it. But if you watch the second to last episode, that's the most violent one they've ever done. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
mayhem all over that episode. So it's like, what do people want? I mean, I've always kind of thought that was funny. The people that they thought, I really wanted a war. Well, there basically was a war in the second to last episode. That was basically them killing off all of
Yeah.
Tony's guys or trying to kill them off.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is that it turns out, I think, I mean, the first season, circle back to that finale,
Yeah,
is, well, it does sort of like, it denies Tony, especially, but by vicariously the audience, of the satisfaction of, taking out his like most intense emotional rivals and that are as part of his immediate family. It does prove that they can kind of like the Sopranos, if it wanted to, could do like really straightforward mob war storylines really
yeah,
well
oh
if they
yeah,
felt like it. Um, but one thing I think you kind of realize, or maybe people don't realize, but that came apparent to me over time, was that if you're doing a mob war storyline, like that doesn't last very long.
no,
Like it's hard to drag that out, like have important people getting whacked for multiple seasons or multiple episodes in a row, because there's just not that many important people
right. I
around
think because
like
I
to
think
burn through.
when you try to do that, you end up with Sons of Anarchy. I mean, that's basically what they tried to do.
No.
Was oh, now it's going to be the white supremacists and we're going to have the war with them, and now it's the
Mhm.
war with the Irish and the war, and it just gets laughable after a while. And
Yeah.
Sopranos, I think, was pretty smart that yeah, if they wanted to be showy with the violence, that they were the best at it. I mean, they didn't have to prove it to you. It's like that was what they were better than anybody at. But they didn't. One of the reasons that the violence meant so much on that show was because it wasn't every week. I mean, they would go a few
Yeah.
weeks without somebody, being shot, without somebody being strangled, and so when it happened, it had way more impact to it, and that was just one of the many kind of the genius aspects to the show, was that they would just kind of ration out the mayhem so that when it happened, it was such a bigger deal. Like I remember, Ralphie getting whacked. I mean, that was huge because it was so much anticipation for that. It was built
Oh
up
yeah, people
over
were
so
waiting for that for
oh
over a season.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, and they would kind of tell you like, oh, it looks like Johnny's gonna do it. He's the one who's gonna get him clipped,
Mm.
and then it wouldn't happen. And then when it did happen, it was kind of out of nowhere. And then, so yeah, that was sort of the genius of the show. And then even in the first season, when you think, oh, he's gonna get his mom, he's gonna get Uncle Junior. This is he's already killed or at least his crew has already kind of killed a bunch of other people. But no, they don't give you the Uncle Junior and the Livia deaths. And I think what they ultimately do with Uncle Junior is so much better in terms of making him kind of an ally to Tony.
Yeah, but and on the one hand, it's also like classic sort of TV syndicated TV stuff that Chase was rebelling against in certain ways when he created The Sopranos. That he contrived a way to not kill Uncle Junior because he liked the actor and wanted to keep him around for and the character around for longer. Um, and that turns out to actually be great in this case.
Oh
That
yeah.
they do find a lot more fun stuff to do with that character, um, and and it's great. But
Oh yeah, there was. I mean, there was
um,
so much to mine from that character. I mean, just the idea that maybe he would have only been a one season type of character is pretty crazy because he's to me he's the funniest character, and ultimately I think his fate is kind of one of the most tragic ones of any of the people on the show.
yeah, yeah. So all right, man, we hit on multiple things there that I want to touch on. One one of them, I guess, being that I, you're right that one of the things the Sopranos did repeatedly and became a source of frustration to fans, but also, in my opinion, uh, it created some of their best episodes. Is how like it could spin up this tension around, oh, so and so is going to get whacked this hour, and it just builds up this tension, like things were going really bad for them, and it seems inevitable all, pretty quickly, like where it didn't last week, but it does this week, and then they back off and they wouldn't. actually carry out that hit. And that's like the one of this in the first season. That's nobody or nobody knows anything,
Right.
which is the episode I almost picked instead of college, where they first start to suspect Big Pussy as a rat, or get like Tony's kind of gearing up to whack him, and he disappears at the end. But we'll put a pin in that. I'll pick a later season episode that's like another version of that
Huh.
is a lot of fun. But there's a lot of that sort of like build up, and then instead of a climax, just sort of letting off steam.
Yes.
And Sopranos is great at that. Um, the other thing, I'm now losing track of my thoughts. Crap.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
about
I
Uncle
mean,
Junior. About Uncle Junior's ultimate fate is that Sopranos, for as violent a show it is, there's so much death on the show, and it also, for as much as it was pushing the boundaries of violence on TV at that time, and again, that's the thing that can look a little quaint now in a post Sons of Anarchy world.
yeah.
Um, but as much as it was pushing those boundaries, it also is a show that when I look back on it, like it has the most deaths by natural causes of just about any like drama I can think of.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
it.
mean, it got to be almost laughable. Just the cuts to funerals on the show. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of. I mean, I'm sure that was on purpose. It was how many times was it just somebody dying of natural causes? I mean, that happened. Yeah, definitely. Other than maybe 6 feet under, but then I guess they weren't really into natural causes. They would always kind of have something pretty crazy going on
Yeah,
at the beginning. But for the most part, I mean, Sopranos probably has the most deaths by natural causes than any other program.
I was going to say 6 feet under as the only alternative there because it's set in a funeral home, but you're also right that they tended to like go for the sort of Rube Goldberg
Yeah,
contraption deaths at the beginning of the episodes.
yeah, they
That they
weren't
just had
really. There
fun doing
wasn't
those little.
there wasn't that much natural death really. Now that I think about it,
Yeah, they always wanted to make some grander point, or not always, but a lot of the time.
right,
But when
right.
at the end of this series, like there's certain things that The Sopranos does that like no other shows do, and this is a mob drama where at the end of the series, I think that Cancer has just as high of a body count as
Oh
like
yeah.
Tony's crew does when it comes to murdering people.
Oh yeah, yeah. The amount. I mean, how many people over the course of the whole series? Like, how many people does Tony actually kill? It's maybe like 5 or 6, maybe. It's not that many.
I want to say it's seven. Actually,
It
I was
could
thinking about
be.
this yesterday. I was thinking about this yesterday, and to see if I could just tally it up in my mind. I believe he does two in season one, two in season two, zero and three, one and four, one and five, and one in 6B. I think that's it. So I don't know. We got to do the clue thing. Is that one plus two plus two plus one? Two plus two plus one?
So who
Maybe it's
does
six.
who does he
All right, he
kill
kills.
in the final season?
We're going. All right, we're going total spoilers here then.
That's fine.
Uh, but all right. So the first season, he gets Febby Petrulio in the college episode,
Yes, yes.
and Chucky Signori, one of Junior's soldiers, in the finale.
Right, right.
And season two, he kills Matt Belalacqua
Yes.
for shooting Christopher, and then Pussy in the finale. I don't
Hmm.
think he gets anybody in the third season.
I don't believe so. No.
Season season four, it's just Ralph.
Ralph. Okay. Yes.
Season five, you got Tony B.
Yep.
Uh, at 6A, nobody, and then 6B is Christopher.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's
can't believe I had to remind you about how Christopher
No,
died.
it's because I always think of just the accident, and yes, I mean obviously he kills him. I because I've had some people they try to say that he killed the guy that he curb stomped. I've heard people say that before. I'm like, no, he
No,
he, he messed him up real good, but it's not quite killing him.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, and I mean, David Scatino probably kills himself eventually, thanks in large part to Tony. But
Yeah,
we're not putting that on his rap sheet.
but at least the last when we see him, he's at least still alive. But yeah, that's yeah, so that just goes to show you is I mean you have this 84 episodes of this violent mob show starring who is widely considered one of the great anti-heroes of all time, and you've got basically 7 deaths. I mean it's pretty like you said,
Well, yeah, he goes less
cancer.
than one person per season.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so it's like it's like you said, I think cancer probably has a much bigger body count over the course of this series.
The other thing that and I don't know if this is the place to say it, but let's just throw it out here now. That that striking about the Sopranos always just tickled me. Um, it's the heir to Twin Peaks in a couple of ways. One for its use of dream sequences,
Oh
which we'll
yeah,
probably get into at later dates. But the other one, they're the only two shows I can think of, and I could throw pretty much all movies into this as well, where when people walk into a room and people are always greeting them and offering them like food or drinks, like, hey, you want something to eat, you want something, whatever. The Sopranos is the only show where people say, yeah, I'll have some of that,
yeah,
and they sit down and eat. And
yes,
there's reasons for that like production reasons that doing scenes where people are actively eating is a nightmare, just because you have to
right,
match continuity. Like you have to keep their plates at the
sure,
right level of eatenness, and then if you're doing 15-20 takes, the actors have to take 15 or 20 bites of the same
yes,
food over and over again, and it gets disgusting.
yeah.
But these are the only two. Twin Peaks. I thought for a long time Sopranos is the only show it does, and I realized, oh no, Twin Peaks. They it's a lot of coffee there, but it's also a lot of pie
Yeah,
and
lots of
sometimes a
a
butter
lot. I
sandwich.
mean, Twin Peaks obviously was mainly just the one diner, but Sopranos is one of the probably the all-time diner shows. I mean, they're always in random diners all over. It's never really the same
Well,
one.
Seinfeld.
No, right, but in terms of just not just one specific diner. Sopranos, there's like how many different diners were shown on this series? They're always, the FBI's in the diners, and this
Yeah.
crew is in the diner. It's all over the place. I think it's got to be the most diner spectacular show ever.
Well, that's what. Yeah, that's where they meet anybody who doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Because diners are anonymous.
yeah,
But there's also you're in Vesuvio like once an episode.
right. I mean that's kind of that's sort of their home ballpark is either the Bing or Vesuvio. But my God, there's got to be at least 25 diners over the course of the whole series. I feel that's probably not that. Maybe I'm a little high, but not by much.
No, probably, and you also just see them like this is yeah weird thing. I don't know what it means that much, except I mean you can make some kind of vague connections about it's the show is a lot about like consumption and consumerism, but you see Tony like make meals in his kitchen or snacks in his kitchen, I should say. Tony doesn't
Yeah.
make meals. He's not that adept.
No. No.
But you see Carmilla make. Like, you see him go into his kitchen and pull out food and eat it a lot.
Well,
You know,
he's good.
that
He's good with the Sundays. He can make
he's good on this.
a very. Anytime I see the scenes with him and a Sunday, I always want a Sunday. So whoever put out all the ingredients that he utilizes did a good job, because it's like, oh man, anytime he has one of those, I need one.
Yeah. All right, that's a lot of random stuff though. Let's talk about your episode. What's the one from season one that stands out to you?
I like the Legend of Tennessee Multisanti. I think that's
Mm.
one. I think because it's maybe I'm a big Christopher fan, and that's kind of his first kind of showy episode where we're really kind of seeing what makes him tick. And I mean, I love the scene in the pastry shop. That's kind of a play on Goodfellas, where he shoots the guy in the foot, and he kind of has that. It happens. So I think that's a great kind of, even though we've met Christopher in earlier episodes, I like that that's kind of the first one where we really kind of have insight into him.
Yeah, that's not one of my favorite ones.
No,
Well, and I think this is a thing. It's related to something when John and I did our other Sopranos episode. We were talking about the many states of Newark, and I was talking about how like they're the flashback episodes they would do periodically to
yeah,
in Tony's childhood in the '60s or whatever, and how like I'm glad that those exist as part of the uh, you know material, the tapestry of the show. They add something to the overall fabric, but they're not none of my favorite episodes. And I feel it's kind of the same way, I guess, about the Christopher episodes where they focus on like his Hollywood ambitions and his career. Like
Well, I see.
I like that. I like that stuff's in there to a degree, but none of them are really like great ones to be.
No, but see, what I like about all of that and all of his fascination with movies and, trying to make it big and trying to be a writer is that they it's a constant with his character. It's like eventually he does
Yeah.
later on make that decision of, oh, I'm done. I'm a gangster through and through, and that's going to be what I do. But then later on, he's producing Cleaver, so he always wants that connection with the entertainment industry. I feel like that never completely goes away for him, and so I always liked that aspect of his character. I thought that was fun. That was kind of like he was a guy who was raised, even though he was raised to be a gangster, he was also raised with all these gangster movies. And I could see him being someone who would watch Goodfellas over and over again. And I don't know, I liked that aspect of his character. That was something that I always enjoyed about Christopher.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that I like that as an aspect of his character. But when he and that aspect take center stage for an episode, it gets like a little too cute for my taste a lot of
Okay.
times. And maybe we'll talk about this in season two more. But because I don't think Legend of Tennessee Multisanti is bad about it. Actually, I like the conversation about the arcs he has
Yeah.
with Polly and Pussy and that whole thing. The Goodfellas reference gets a little like nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I like The
Yeah.
Sopranos when it's
I can see what you're
doing that.
saying, but I don't know. It was just one of those, maybe because it was just something that I remember first watching that episode and making the connection between him being in Goodfellas and a shot in the foot and him. I don't know, maybe because it's just very clear that it was like, oh, I get this. I understand exactly what's going on here. And for some reason, maybe it's just out of nostalgia for when I first saw that episode. That's just a moment that's always stuck with me.
Honestly, that may be part of the disconnect between our perspectives here because I don't think I didn't recognize that as a Goodfellas reference right away.
Oh, okay.
I think at that time I had never seen Goodfellas all the way through.
Okay.
Like it's one of those movies. Goodfellas to me is one of those movies where like I saw it all in pieces before I ever saw it
Sure.
like
Sure.
fully. You know, uh, and I think maybe I know I had seen the spider getting shot in the foot scene before, but I hadn't made the connection. I had that that Michael Imperioli was Spider in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Um, when I first saw that episode of The Sopranos. Um,
Yeah, I just for some reason that whole sequence has always, and just how so much of the episode is about him not being respected, and yeah, they're pounding you over the head with it with him not being respected in the pastry shop, but it all just kind of made sense to me, and it's also kind of fun. Even though he's not playing Vito, but you see Vito in that
yeah,
in that scene is kind of a fun little moment. I mean, it's kind of an oddity, but I don't know. I've always liked that episode. It's pound for pound probably not the best one of the season, but it's one that I've always enjoyed just because I'm a big Christopher fan, and so kind of him getting his first sort of big showy episode is one I've always liked.
I do like it for that. I suppose because Christopher is a great character, and
Oh yeah.
it's. I think if Christopher and if Michael Imperioli hadn't been so good as Christopher and so good with James Gandolfini, and if that character hadn't worked the way he did, I think we might have gotten like two less seasons of The Sopranos overall.
That's quite possible. Yeah, I mean, there was just so much to mine from that character. I mean, already said that about Uncle Junior, but I think the same was true
Yeah.
with Christopher. I mean, just his battles with addiction. Even though, I mean, we've seen so much of that in
And that
TV.
relationship with Tony,
Right. Oh, for sure. I mean,
because the
that
addiction
was
stuff wasn't there in the first season. Like I mean, he's doing drugs, but it
right. But yeah,
it wasn't like
he's not, yeah, certainly he's not like a full-on addict. I mean, I don't think you really start to see that until the second season, like when they go to Italy and he's just completely
yeah.
is just zonked the whole time. um so yeah, I mean, that relationship in the first season between him and Tony, I mean, that's again one of the best aspects to it. And like you said, I mean, their relationship probably did add 2 seasons worth, because when you get all into all the later stuff with Adriana and how that kind of triangle between those three characters, I mean, there was just so much material there.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to mention is that it's also not just that Michael Imperioli wasn't so good and so good with James Gandolfini. I think he's also so good that they when they found Drea De Matteo, who was in the pilot episode as just a
But yeah,
hostess, like
but
they
barely, yeah.
clearly like like it doesn't not fit that like it makes sense. They established that Adriana is working as a hostess later on, so I guess she
Right.
is playing Adriana in the opening up episode. But it's clear when you watch the pilot that they don't know that that is somebody that like Christopher is dating, and she
Oh,
is no.
exactly. Yeah, I mean
Uh,
that's for sure, for sure. That was, and I mean I don't know. I mean they just lucked into it. I mean that was there's another character that at first you're like, oh, she's just kind of the ditzy mob girlfriend, but man, I mean
yeah,
what they're able to get out of that character is just, oh my god, it's crazy how good those scenes are with between her and Christopher as everything really starts to unravel for them.
yeah. But even the earlier season, when things are relatively good, I
Yeah.
think they still are just. I think they kind of lucked into something there. We're like, all right, Christopher and Tony stuff works great, and so we're going to give Christopher more of his own spotlight, and if we need to give him like his own sort of supporting characters to play off of, and they found Dre Mateo, and there's oh man, like they play off really well off each other, and just they found a lot more to mine there than I mean clearly than they knew they had in the pilot episode, but of course they didn't know that. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
because the,
it's
the the pilot in
she,
general, for a show that is hysterically funny, like the pilot to me is really going for comedy. Like I've always kind of
yeah.
found that it's maybe the comedy's ratcheted up maybe about 10% higher than it would be in a regular episode. It's like they're really trying to go for a little more humor. And so that's something that you kind of notice as that season goes on, is that it's not quite as jokey as that the pilot sets it up to be.
Well, I think that in the pilot they're yeah you're right, they're going a bit broader, and especially
Yeah.
with like just like the filmmaking, like the editing and the music choices are a little
Yeah,
like
like when he's chasing down
goofier. Yeah,
the guy with the that owes Tony money. I mean, that's they weren't usually that jokey with stuff like that later on.
yeah, they got more comfortable with playing things more deadpan. That plays back to what I was talking about, like separating out a punchline for 3 scenes later, where
Right.
they're just like confident that they don't need to underline this with like a music cue that highlights the comedic element of it,
Yeah.
uh, or a smash cut. Like they never really got over doing like comedy cuts, like
No, no. I mean, there.
going from somebody saying this to something else that is
Yeah.
a humorous juxtaposition.
I mean, to me,
But
it's one of the funniest shows that's ever been on TV. It just to
yeah,
me the style of the comedy from the pilot is not really indicative of what you see
yeah,
going forward.
yeah, I would agree with that. All right, man. So I guess final verdict: Sopranos season one, pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty darn good, you know. And I mentioned, Mikey, but if I had to mention another character that was only in a handful of episodes, but who I thought was also just excellent in this season, is John Hurd as Tony's kind of
Mm.
crooked cop. I mean, I know he passed away a few years ago, but God, what a great actor! I mean, I just think in just maybe it was might have been 3 or 4 episodes. That guy did a ton in those episodes, and I don't know. That's just another sort of forgotten hero of the show. It was John Hurt. I thought he was excellent.
Well, that goes back to my number two pick. Nobody knows anything is sort of also John Hurd's spotlight episode,
Yeah.
where it's his character exiting,
Yes.
and it's really good for that.
Yeah.
And oh man, like we could, I could talk about that episode a lot.
Oh,
No, we
there's
did. We hardly talked about our episodes.
yeah.
I
I
did.
mean,
We really talked about college, like
college
college
is
at
good.
all. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
in terms of just sort of one shot Sopranos characters, I mean, one episode and done. The guy that played Febby, I mean, I thought he was incredible. It's like they tend to give those Emmys for like guest supporting actor. They always give those to, like the old
mm,
known people, and they never really give them to people that aren't very known. But man,
yeah.
that guy should have gotten something, because I thought he was excellent in that episode.
he was really good. That was the episode that Edie Falco won her Emmy for in
Oh
the
yeah,
first
well
season.
that's the other thing is
It
that
was
you've got obviously the storyline with Tony that everyone knows about. The stuff with Carmela and Father Phil is also great that episode.
yeah, it's really good.
Oh, I mean,
That's
that's the B storyline. I mean, you could have made that the
yeah.
focus of an episode. It was great.
Yeah, that's an all around great episode of television. That's the thing that I mean. Obviously, what gets focused on is the splashier thing that had a more direct impact on like the shape of TV and as we cable took over and then streaming. But yeah, it's such an all around like powerhouse episode.
Well,
It cuts down the cast to like
yeah.
just the Soprano family basically, and Carmela stuff's also really great in that episode.
Well, I love how quickly at the end of the episode it goes from Tony's anger over Father Phil spending so much time there to Carmela's
Yeah.
reveal of Dr. Melfi, and just how it switches so fast to how Tony
Yep.
is now having to beg and plead for his innocence. That's a great way to cap
Yeah.
the episode.
That it is, and it's a comedic way
Oh,
to
it
have an
is.
episode that has been this just searing dramatic thing for both of them.
Yes.
But that's and then yeah, you're right that turn where Tony goes from being the aggressor
Right.
to chasing her down and begging and pleading so quickly
Yes.
as the credits roll is it's it's like a King of Queens ending.
It is. It is. It's like the greatest King of Queens episode ever, but it works perfectly.
Yeah,
It's such a great way to finish that episode. They should have done that storyline on King of Queens.
yeah. Yeah, there's just not enough horny priests on TV. You know what?
No.
Never mind. I immediately see the problem with that. I'm gonna.
Well,
Uh,
how much of real life do we want TV to reflect?
yeah, I prefer priests who are just horny for food.
Oh yeah, hey, that's who isn't horny for food?
Well, I mean that's Sopranos. Like we said, makes me hungry.
It does.
I watch it.
It's definitely a show that they had the best meals on that show. I mean, it's almost like watching Big Night every week. I mean, that show was so good.
Yeah, it's Big Night and Goodfellas
Right.
and a pretty good episode of King of Queens, like all wrapped
Exactly.
into one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's our review of season 1 of The Sopranos, right there.
There we go. Great season. I recommend it to
All right.
all. If you've
All
been on the
right.
fence,
Bon
give it a
sir, sir.
watch.
All right, thanks, Chris.
All right, thank you. Thanks for
We'll
having
do this
me on.
again soon.
Absolutely.